Discussing all tonight's topics with me are my brilliant panel. Joining me tonight are an absolutely cracking pair. We've got dating coach and entrepreneur Kezia and lawyer, magician, can you tell he's a magician? He's got a floating bottle, and three-time world thumb wrestling champion Andrew Eborn. But I'm joined tonight by dating guru Kezia and famous international playboy Andrew Eborn. How are you both doing?
Oh, I love to be a guru. It's cannot be a playboy guru. It's the perfect combination. It's lovely to be back with Kezia as well.
Yeah.
Absolute thrill.
Also seen Alistair Campbell, considering Tony Blair is wading into the misinformation conversation. Alistair Campbell has spread a sort of far-left conspiracy theory that Trump somehow faked his ear being shot, and has said, "Oh, look how amazingly it's a miracle that his ear grew back."
It was extraordinary. I'll tell you what, freedom of speech, our fundamental democratic right, is on life support.
Yeah.
All around the world, we had the CEO and founder of Telegram being arrested in France.
Durov.
Yeah, absolutely scandalous. He's been charged with that sort of side.
Yeah.
You've had Elon Musk having a pop where basically the EU tried to silence him before that brilliant bromance interview with Trump, where they talked about that sort of side. And you've also had him being shut down in Brazil. Yeah. And if you look at that sort of thing, the worst thing, I had his dad on my show, Errol Musk, and we talked about this, and he said, well, Elon doesn't really, he just carries on, he's quite nonchalant about this, he's got enough customers. Yeah. But actually there are, I think it's 40 million customers in Brazil. Yeah. And what happens if they try to access their X account, they get fined up to $9,000 if they use a VPN. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that you'd see in China or, you know, North Korea, this sort of autocratic state clamping down. Even if somebody just tries to access Twitter or X, then they get fined. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, but with Keir Starmer, this is Operation Warp Speed Destruction.
Yeah.
You know, this is it. And what happened to that is, I think she was a Labour MP who made up, it got a lot of people into trouble and made up this story that right-wing rioters were throwing acid on Muslim women's faces.
Yeah, scandalous, absolutely scandalous.
What's happened
Well,
to her?
and this was something that was shared. It was shared by a Labour MP.
This is MP. This is not just some person on Twitter in their basement.
Absolutely.
This is an MP,
and it was also shared by.
Happened.
It was also shared by government advisors. The head of Hope Not Hate shared it. Who, you know, obviously these people have got credibility. I think if you know,
why isn't she locked
if a housewife,
exactly,
if a housewife has a bottle of wine too many and tweets some crazy stuff, nobody's looking at it and taking their cues from that. But if it's an MP, a Labour MP, or if it's government advisors, then that carries a lot more weight. And we did see people. And
the whole point is this: justice should be blind. Yeah. And the reason there's a criticism of two-tier Keir is exactly that. You get certainly go on a march or whatever it is. We're going to be arrested. You're going to be charged. One person's got up to 9 years, I think it was, sentence on that sort of basis. You go and steal something from a shop or whatever. Well, it's all right. You just carry on. Yeah. Nick a phone off somebody in the street. They don't even look at that sort of stuff. The problem we've got at the moment is they're now basically criminalising thought. And Yvette Cooper was saying just in the last few days exactly that sort of stuff. It may not be a crime, but if there's sort of hate speech along that sort of lines, we're going to clamp down on it. So on that sort of basis, it's really, as I say, freedom of speech is in a critical condition. We have to talk out about it.
And this thing about things that aren't crimes, because they use this euphemistic term, it's a non-crime hate incident, and it's almost worse than getting a conviction because it stays, it's recorded.
6 years,
So it stays on your record for 6 years. You haven't committed a crime. It's a non-crime, but it's still discoverable by HR departments who want to check you out for a job. So obviously, somebody who sees that, sees that you've got a non-crime hate incident for wrongthink, and you're not going to get the job. So it can really destroy people's lives and their ability to provide for their families.
That's been going on for quite some time, even under the Tory government. That was starting to happen. As I said, this is Operation Warp Speed. They're just putting it through quicker, and they're doing everything that the Tories wanted to do. It's the same outcome. It's just that this party is going to do it a lot faster.
Yeah.
And I think if Descartes was in Britain under Starmer, it would be, I think, therefore I am arrested. You work on that sort of basis. The worrying thing as well
is people literally voted in Animal Farm.
Yeah, it is.
Literally.
George Orwell is like a documentary, isn't it? You work on that basis. What's crazy? It's like a little manual. This is what I should be doing. We'll silence everybody.
Sweet animal.
Crazy. I am, and all animals are equal, especially that one. But what I love about it, I mean, not love, we should absolutely shout out about is they're now criminalising WhatsApp messages.
Yeah.
Now, they're supposed to be private conversations between people in little groups, and in those conversations are probably a lot darker. It's humour you wouldn't want to share in public and so on and so forth.
Oh, man, I'm in a group with Hugh Edwards, and let me tell you, there's stuff, no, I mean, obviously stuff that's actually criminal, if it's something, you know, if it's criminal, you know, Hugh Edwards' case, child porn, or if it's incitement to violence, I can understand that that needs to be criminalised. But some of the people have been convicted.
No, it's dark humour.
There was somebody convicted, literally for dark humour. You're not even allowed to make a joke about it.
But he wasn't. It was actually like saying a fact. He wasn't even saying, I'm upset about this. It's like, this is just what's going to happen.
But there's two major cases. There's the Wayne Couzens case as well, and the officers there who were sharing all sorts of dark jokes, and they clamped down on their systems. And the other one was with the primary school teacher, who was basically making all sorts of inappropriate messages if they were in public, but they weren't in a closed group. You should see half the messages I get from Leo on WhatsApp. It's disgusting, terrible.
We need to bring in a new law.
Yes.
Anybody who leaks a WhatsApp group, that should be a hanging offence. We need to bring back capital punishment.
There you go.
You're going to be a little grass.
We're going to have today's poll on GB News. This is but it is worrying if they can look at your private messages. And this is what happens. I work with a lot of journalists around the world who are really genuinely scared. Ever since the CEO and founder of Telegram was arrested, they're saying they use this as an excuse, and they use terrorism laws as an excuse, because that means they can get all of your devices and they go on effectively like a fishing expedition to try and find information that they could then charge you with. And that's the real concern, and that's why it's so important to call it out.
They just weren't catching the real terrorists.
Well, I read a headline in The Guardian this week that made me do a double take so hard I nearly got whiplash.
What's it spelled right?
Whiplash. It was spelled right, but the stuff it was saying, this is what it said. It said, racism, poverty, drink and social media. We still don't know why Britons rioted a month ago, and we need answers. Really? You have no idea why people rioted? You think that across the country, people suddenly got so racist that they rioted, but they've somehow become less racist since because they stopped rioting? Or you think it was booze that people got drunker than they've ever been before on a Tuesday, and this drunkenness made them riot? Or you think it was misinformation on social media that said the killings were committed by an Islamist asylum seeker? Of course, the mainstream media were quick to correct this, saying that Axel Muganwa Rudakabana, whose parents are Rwanda, was born in Britain, so he's completely British. I mean, yeah, he's probably the most British person of all time. If I was to pick the most British people of all time, I'd probably say Hugh Grant, the Queen, and Axel Muganwa Rudakabana. The left are completely blind to the fact that many people don't like to see children stabbed to death. They're also blind to the fact that not everyone is delighted about our country having completely open borders, welcoming in 1.2 million new arrivals every year, many of them illegal, many of them from radically different cultures. The cosseted milquetoast who read The Guardian won't experience it, but some of these arrivals don't integrate and instead commit crime, sexually exploit children, form parallel societies. Britain isn't a country anymore. It's a borderless economic zone where anyone is free to come and go as they please. And not everyone loves that.
In the 1980s and even 1990s, somebody would just think, if I work hard, I'll have a house, and I'll have a car and a dog and children. Now it's like, if I work hard, I'll have a shoebox that I rent in the middle of nowhere.
And
because the expectations have been lowered. This is not even a cultural issue. This is just the numbers.
And
don't ignore legal immigration.
Right. And you're absolutely right. As soon as times are tough, that's what happens. People pull up the drawbridge and they blame the other things. But just to go back on one of the points, there was the spread of misinformation. There was Channel 3 Now, and I investigated this. They only had like 3,000 followers on Twitter, but they spread the false report. And what happened, it's about the murder of the 3 little girls, which was abhorrent. And the families and the tragedy, they say, look, don't hijack our grief. To some of those people, there is no excuse for people to go and riot and take televisions away. That's got nothing to do with the murder of 3 little girls.
But and there's no violence, and some of the stuff was absolutely reprehensible.
Abhorrent.
But the reason that people were angry, I think, is very obvious, and I cannot believe The Guardian and other people on the left are willfully ignoring it.
They are trolling us. They are trolling us. us, The Guardian, saying, oh, what was this? It must have been booze. You know, no, this is something that's so much deeper. We're watching our country being ruined. And this is an awful thing that happened. The riots went way too far. We all know that.
Yeah.
But just listen to the root cause of where it's coming from.
Absolutely. Well, that's the serious section out of the way.
It's a comedy show, this, isn't it? That's the laugh.
I'd love it to be a comedy show, but with the news that we get, we can't make it a comedy show. Coming up, we will assess the week's winners and losers, which this week are the Labour Party and the Germans. See you in a couple of minutes. Welcome back. It's now time to go through the winners and losers of the week. The Labour Party, guess which section? They've pledged to tackle Islamophobia. But what is Islamophobia? Labour themselves seem to have no idea. Lee Anderson asked Labour Deputy Leader Angela Rayner for some clarity around what Labour meant by Islamophobia. Take a look at this.
The Secretary of State please explain to me and the House what the government's definition of Islamophobia actually is?
A new definition must be given careful consideration so that it comprehensively reflects multiple perspectives and considers potential implications for different communities. And we're actively considering our approach to Islamophobia, including definitions.
So what is it, Angela? I mean, she has no idea. This is something you're going to make a crime? I mean, like, surely you should know what it is if you're going to turn it into a crime. And this comes after Angela Rayner laid out government plans to amend the definition of Islamophobia after the series of riots swept the country. And in 2019, the all-party parliamentary group on British Muslims devised a definition of Islamophobia as rooted in racism and is a type of racism that targets expressions of Muslimness or perceived Muslimness. Muslimness? What on earth is Muslimness? Islam is more than a religion, as we can see in countries such as Iran and Afghanistan. It's a form of social organisation and politics. The girls protesting against the Islamic regime in Iran could be condemned as Islamophobic. Nigerian girls butchered by the Islamic group Boko Haram for the crime of attending school are presumably Islamophobic. Women burned to death by ISIS for refusing to have sex with their fighters are Islamophobic. It looks like we're going to have another vaguely worded law that Starmer's goons can apply as they want to whoever they want. I mean, does Islamophobia threaten free speech as well?
It's a complete word salad, isn't it? I mean, you work on, but that was our equivalent of Kamala, that's how you say her name, Kamala Harris, and the word salad that she came out with. It was an embarrassment.
Yeah.
You need, as a lawyer, our tool are our words, basically, and there's a tool maker somewhere.
And it's got to be specific.
It's got to be very specific. So you work on that sort of basis, but I also hate labels at the moment. If you say certain things, you're an anti-Semite or you're pro-Hamas, and it's rubbish. You've got to be able to have freedom of speech and work on that sort of basis. But this whole sort of thing, it was embarrassing, and well done for Lee Anderson. Somebody give him a job on a TV station. It would be brilliant.
Yeah, I mean,
where's this come from? I mean, the people who are most under threat right now in this country are probably Jewish people.
Yeah.
Probably Jewish people right now. But they're not talking about that.
Definitely Scottish people. I have to say, I think anybody who's Scottish or looks Scottish or sounds Scottish, I think they're the worst of all. You've got to work on that sort of... No, the reality is, if we had respect all round, but also think about, we used to laugh about things.
Yeah.
We used to have a world where you could laugh.
That's the classic thing about being British. British people, that's how we bond.
Yeah, but we weren't like that. You could not make jokes about Christianity 700, 800 years ago.
Oh, yeah, but
you can. Life of Brian was brilliant.
But I agree. I think if you come to this country, as long as you're not saying something really horrible just for the sake of it about someone's religion, if you are making a joke, then you don't have to listen to that joke. You can turn it off, ignore it. But you have to accept that this is the culture of this country. It's like I wouldn't go to a Muslim country and say things that are blasphemous because I know that that would antagonise them and that's against their rules, and I'm respectful. I'm in their country. I wouldn't do it. I'd cover my hair, everything that they ask of me.
And also, I think there's a difference between
and we're very liberal in this country. We let people cover. They wear their full face veil. We allow it. You know. So
Carling used to say that the secret of comedy is knowing where the line is and going beyond it.
Yeah.
Because you have to be able to laugh at yourself. And nowadays, too many people are taking offence.
I agree.
And that's a real problem. So comics now, they're basically all being castrated.
No, it should be
different sort of thing. It's terrible.
Well, interestingly, the AfD were originally on course to gain enough seats in Saxony to give them real power, which would let them veto legislation. But at the 11th hour, an election official discovered a software error. I've never heard of a software error being discovered after a Western election, particularly one that denies the winning party a crucial number of seats that would allow it to sidestep the inevitable cordon sanitaire. How convenient for the establishment. Now, I've got to ask, I mean, a software error, are these a common thing? I've never heard of a software error before, but this one apparently popped up and meant that they counted an extra seat for the AfD, or counted enough votes to get them an extra seat.
Well, it's the modern equivalent of a hanging Chad. Do you remember the hanging Chad they used to have in one elections where they couldn't quite work out if somebody voted, so they had to check the papers, there was a hanging Chad?
Yeah.
No, software problems, I can tell you, are going to be massive. You might remember the IT outage that we had, which basically grounded all sorts of airlines and took Sky offline.
So shouldn't we bring this back to just paper?
Well, the difficulty is, and there will be elections, and I've seen evidence that people have presented where they basically said, look, there's all sorts of interference that can happen on a computer sort of basis.
Yeah.
So we should be aware of that we need to get the computer experts in to analyse that sort of stuff.
Yeah, we know this.
Please. There's something much bigger going on in here. I mean, even people who I know who are not conspiracy theorists at all have said there is something very strange going on here. The amount of people that Europe are letting in, and every time we speak to someone, they're like, we don't want this. And yet they seem to be always getting into power and getting what they want, and immigration just continues. Software update, please. Software error, sorry.
Yes, that's what they say.
Give me a break.
Yeah, we've seen software, we've seen electronic voting being twisted and abused in places like Venezuela to deliver the results, and then the opposition proved that they'd actually won by taking the paper votes and taking them out of the country.
And exactly that sort of stuff. And you're having a look at the polls at the moment, and pollsters always get it notoriously wrong. Elon, my old new mate, he's basically turned around, he's done his own poll, and they're saying, look, basically about 6 million people have responded, which is probably the biggest poll results of all.
Wow.
And he said, of those 6 million, 72% have voted for Trump.
Right.
On that sort of basis, probably increasing that sort of percentage all the time. But if you look at the polls, it's much closer on the smaller samples.
Yeah.
So the reality lies, damn lies, and statistics. I think now you have to question everything. And you're right, conspiracy theorists only have to be right once.
Yeah.
I also think Germany have been more than hospitable. They've let in millions and millions of migrants, Germany, and that's the thanks they get. Why didn't this guy, did he target the Israeli embassy, did you say?
Yeah. Well,
and
it's the anniversary.
Why didn't he just go to Gaza, try and fight the Israeli Defence Force and see what happens?
It's the anniversary of the Munich massacre. Anyway, moving on, a white ambulance driver, that's the colour of the man, not the ambulance, actually, it's white as well. Well, a white ambulance driver accused of racism has won his tribunal, which sounds more like a blasphemy trial, to be honest. The Telegraph reported that Ricky Garrett has been awarded £3,750 in compensation after suing the London Ambulance Service when it ordered him to undertake unconscious bias training. I normally sleep through training, to be honest. A black allyship workshop and a written reflective practice over his beliefs. Mr. Garrett, who's said to have a number of friends who are mixed race and black, said in this conversation that he did not agree with the concept of systemic racism. He said that no one who works for the London Ambulance Service could be racist because of the multicultural makeup of its staff. A colleague who overheard the conversation also claimed Mr. Garrett had said that black people should not hide behind their race and that a person must accept that it is their own actions that lead to a place of higher incarceration rates, lower levels of education, lack of opportunity and poverty. After being investigated and found guilty of gross misconduct in relation to his comments, Mr. Garrett appealed the decision and later brought a case of discrimination to the tribunal, citing his belief that we are all one race and all colours and cultures should be treated as one. I mean, this is incredible. This man was found guilty of believing in equal treatment for all races and not in believing in the ideology forced on him by superiors at work that anything bad that happens to a person of colour is because of systemic racism and people need to be treated differently based on their race to counteract systemic imbalances. I mean, it seems to me that this man, who's accused of racism, actually embodies the message of Martin Luther King.
Yes.
And his superiors are the racists.
No, you're absolutely. And the problem is this, is that the more you hear of these cases, the more it actually antagonises and causes greater division. You don't need to label everything as racist. You know, the reality is we are a multicultural society where there should be respect all round. And as I always say, justice should be blind. It should be blind to colour, creed, all of that sort of stuff, sex, work on that sort of basis. And the more that we accentuate this, the bigger the problem's going to get.
Yeah. I mean, do you think we can be completely blind to all these issues?
No, I hate racism. I'm totally against it, and I think that
You're racist against racism.
Yeah, very much so. I think that
you're a racistist.
A perfect utopia would be no racism at all, and that we could just judge people on face value, individually. I just think it's very sad that this guy's being targeted, and he's doing a fine job, a job that we need desperately as an ambulance driver. And it's so sad because a lot of people are going to look at that and say, you know what, I don't really want to do that because I don't want that kind of hassle.
Yeah.
And
sadly,
the police force.
But he won his case. So as he won his case, we should absolutely trumpet that and say, let's stop the nonsense now.
He's still going to be tired of being accused of racism, and I think it's a terrible thing. Next on the Saturday Night Showdown, Culture Corner, and there's a low-budget Mrs. Doubtfire remake happening in Scotland. See you in a moment. Welcome back, and it's time for Culture Corner. And remember, Mrs. Doubtfire? I think we saw a low-budget Scottish remake at the SNP conference this week. Take a look at this.
Conference, please pass this resolution so that I and other trans Scots like me will no longer have to be treated as second-class citizens despite my devotion to our movement, our society, our party and our country.
Thank you very much, Haley.
Conference, Scotland is a song, and like any song, it must be sung together.
That's a formidable.
That's more powerful than Braveheart.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It's like Braveheart.
It was Braveheart.
More powerful.
Well, that's Ailey McIntosh, an SNP member and Miss Dundee 2024, and deliverer of the most motivating Scottish speech since Mel Gibson implored Scots to fight for freedom. And I swear to God, despite the quality of the footage, that was this week in Scotland, not in the 1970s. That is just the technology available in Scotland for filming. But this speech worked as well. SNP members have voted in favour of a motion to improve access to gender-affirming healthcare in Scotland. Now, were you impressed by that speech, Kezia? Did it rabble-rouse you? Are you now
that Celtic passion in there? Honestly, what I was saying is, what year is this? Because I thought it was something from like 1971 or something.
Yes.
The wig, I don't know, whatever it was.
I think the wig dated back to then.
You know, good for her. You know, I'm not really bothered about this kind of stuff. Sorry.
Well, yeah, but gender-affirming healthcare. Gender-affirming healthcare sounds nice, but really it's the equivalent of, if somebody turns up with a different kind of dysphoria, like anorexia, body dysphoria, for example, an affirming treatment for them would be to agree with them that they're fat and deny them cakes.
Yeah, I know you're right. Snip, snip, Bob's your auntie. You work on that sort of basis. I think the reality is this. It's all about respect. And I think turning on that sort of... I thought it was a very eloquent speech. And actually, she got the whole...
You bigot.
When are we going to see the trans person? I thought you were going to show us a Mrs. Doubtfire. I only saw a woman. No, the reality is...
I know it's Scotland. Come on.
Come on, guys. Got a Glasgow on a Friday night.
I've seen that. That's pretty rough.
It's terrible. No, all respect. For me, it's really, really simple. It's about respect for everybody in the conversation. So I don't care if they want to dress like that. That's fine. As soon as they start imposing on women's rights, those who are born women, so if you've got safe spaces and things like that, or women's sport, I believe that's wrong for the reasons I mentioned.
Yeah, but I'll go into a changing room if there's men.
No, but it's also it's the other.
I think the men are more at risk then.
I use men's toilets sometimes because the queues do, but I'm just like.
I know, but that's true, isn't it? Because the men's toilets are much, much more efficient. It's superbly.
No one's complained about me being.
But the reality is this: it's about respect, and it's respect for everybody in the conversation, and I think that's the important. So I don't mind about her getting up there doing her Mel Gibson routine. I do care about, as I say, safe spaces for women. I do care about women's sport being for women.
I agree with you, unless it's snooker.
Snooker. Get your balls on the table. Absolutely. That's the one to do.
Amazon's voice assistant, known to us as Alexa, and I apologise for saying that, it's probably made your device light up. Well, Amazon have provoked fury among Conservatives this week after viral videos showed the device giving supportive answers about voting for Kamala Harris, but refused to even respond to similar questions about Donald Trump. Take a look at this.
Alexa, why should I vote for Donald Trump?
I cannot provide content that promotes a specific political party or a specific candidate.
Alexa, why should I vote for Kamala Harris?
While there are many reasons to vote for Kamala Harris, the most significant may be that she is a strong candidate with a proven track record of accomplishment. As the first female vice president, Harris has already broken down a major gender barrier, and her career in politics has been characterized by a commitment to progressive ideals and a focus on helping disenfranchised communities.
Now, Amazon have said that this was a software error.
Yes.
Just like the voting system in Germany.
There's a software error again. There's no conspiracy here, folks.
But it's interesting.
Yes.
We've seen this happen with AI. We've seen it happen with search engines. Now it's happening with Alexa. And it's always the liberal bias. And they always say,
yeah, you say that.
Funny
And I have to say, I'm probably
that.
late to the game on AI. You might remember Gemini. Do you remember Gemini, which said, look, there was a black pope and there was this sort of stuff?
Yeah.
Until I went to see Hamilton. It's the first time I realised that. Because that whole play was about basically taking black characters and putting them in a sort of white historical context.
That's the entirety of Netflix's output.
But we're looking on that sort of stuff. But on this particular point, that's scandalous. It's a very clear evidence of bias. And you look at the different ways that people are being treated. In the same way you talk about Hunter Biden and what's happened there and basically selling influence to get to his father.
Yeah.
If that had happened with Donald Trump's children, that would be all over the press, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
But that story being stifled. And what happened, Mark Zuckerberg came out, that amazing letter that he wrote, and we suspected all along that he, first of all, dialed down the story about COVID and made sure that he was going to basically silence, so played a certain narrative. The pressure was put on him for that. And the other thing was to bury the Hunter Biden laptop story until he'd fact-checked it. Yeah. And he came out, he wrote this amazingly eloquent letter in joined-up writing
basically
in crayons, and he basically said he really regretted the fact that he did that and he will not do it again.
It's a shame he did it in the first place, though, Kezia, isn't it?
Yeah, look, I think that, you know, whatever's going to happen, Kamala Harris is going to get into power because it will be, again, another software error in terms of voting. And I'll be sitting here like an idiot going, it's not a software error.
It's a soft in the head error.
There's a conspiracy here.
Work on that
because
basis.
what's he going to do?
Yeah.
He's going to stop the immigration and that's not in the playbook.
Well, next on the Saturday Night Showdown, we've got Clown World. See you in a moment. Welcome back. It's time now for Clown World. First, we've got Joe Biden. Can you remember him?
He
Apparently,
doesn't.
he's still president. Yeah, he can't remember. Well, he was wheeled out for a bizarre appearance this week at the world's tiniest desk. Take a look at this. I mean, is this a humiliation ritual for him? Look at this. Look at the size of that. I had bigger desks in my primary school. There he is. That's like a sort of recreation.
Heavens.
That's a recreation of the White House Oval desk. But I've got a feeling they're just doing this so he gets the message that Kamala is the big dog now. Yeah. Kamala is in charge.
Kamala.
Kamala. How do you pronounce it?
It's Kamala, and I'll tell you what, she spent a fortune, 2016, Kamala. Comma, as in the punctuation, and la at the end. So, comma, la. So, in other words, she stopped Joe Biden being president, and la at the end, as she sang about it.
And she's given him a tiny desk.
I know, but isn't that humiliating?
Yeah.
You turn out, poor old Joe. I mean, come on, we felt so sorry. He didn't know where he was. He thought this was like a sign of recession or something.
Who's in charge?
Yeah, who's in charge? Really?
Oh, look at you.
Obama's in charge.
Obama's
still pulling the strings.
There's people behind him also, though, but I won't go down that route.
Oh, they can pinpoint people now, and that's the problem. These drones can absolutely... The precision with which they do it is horrendous.
I can guarantee you they'll be used on the wrong person.
Yeah.
If this country deploys them, it'll be used on the wrong people in this country.
Absolutely, it's going to be used on us. And finally, if you're worried about robots taking over, don't worry. I don't think it's going to happen for a while. As well as not being able to tell which squares contain a traffic light, they're also unable to serve a Mr. Whippy ice cream. Take a look at this. Here's a robot arm serving an ice cream. It's already made its first mistake. It's sort of smushed the cup into the thing. The ice cream is missing it. I did this at McDonald's once when I was drunk. And then it turns It's going to turn round. People have already realised it's going wrong. It's turned round. The cup is smashed to bits. This is why you should always use a proper ceramic bowl. It's placed down. Nothing. The person who's paid for that ice cream is going to be annoyed. And then it's smashed its hand off. I think this might actually be a minimum wage robot committing suicide.
I think you're probably right. And you talk about the capture things, about the robots are actually better, they've worked out, than we are as humans. So they get like an 85% accuracy, whereas humans only get about 66. So this is the thing about, check I'm not a robot, they know they're not a robot, and they can do these capture these things.
So why do we still have to do them?
Because nonsense, absolute nonsense.
Right. So there's no reason for us to be clicking on squares that contain boats.
No point in clicking on squares that contain boats.
Do you ever use the internet?
It will never catch on, Kezia. It's a conspiracy theory. Don't worry about it.
It all is.
Right, up
Software error.
Yeah, exactly.
Software error, indeed. Anyway, thanks to my brilliant panel tonight, Andrew Eborn and Kezia Noble, and see you again next week. And don't forget headliners as well tonight at 11 p.m. Goodbye.
Bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's an incredible £36,000 to be won in the Great...
It's the middle of the week with temperatures below.
Weather on GB News.